Phasmophobia is repetitive, only fun with friends, and is just kind of boring. I'm going to explain why that is and how I think it could be solved, but first I'll give you a brief summary of the game. Phasmophobia is a first-person ghost hunting game, where you and up to 3 friends who all work for a ghost hunting agency go into an abandoned area with a bunch of random equipment, which you use to try and figure out what type of ghost is haunting the area, whilst accomplishing a couple of side quests along the way. There are currently 10 maps that are split into 3 map sizes. Small, which contains 3 smaller street houses, the one currently being shown being Willow Street House. Medium, which contains 3 maps, a larger roadhouse and 2 farmhouses, the map being shown being Bleasdale Farmhouse. And finally large, which contains a prison, asylum, high school and campsite, with the high school being the one shown. The small maps are pretty fast and fun. You can usually figure out which room the ghost is in within a few minutes of loading in, and if you're in a high enough difficulty, tend to get quite a lot of ghost activity quite quickly, due to the players being so close to the areas that they haunt. The medium maps are much better suited to professional nightmare difficulties, with the ghosts not being as active as much due to players being near them less, and therefore the higher difficulties counteract this to keep the maps fun. So if the other 2 map sizes are pretty decent, then surely bigger is better, right? Well, not really. My experience with the large maps has been pretty dull. It's not too hard to figure out where the ghost is, but it usually takes a lot longer than the medium and small maps, and just walking around holding a random piece of ghost hunting equipment gets kind of boring after a while. Now yes, it's probably partially due to me being pretty bad at the game, but I've found that at least half of me or my friends die in this mode just due to being kind of bored and less focused, therefore doing something dumb. And if you die early on in this game, it is the most boring wait I can think of any game I've played. If you die in a large map whilst only really knowing where the ghost is and without much evidence, you might as well open up a game of Tetris to keep you company, because unless you're playing with people who actually know what they're doing, which you probably aren't, you're going to be sat there for a long time. Okay, so now that we know the larger maps are pretty boring unless you're playing with Phasmophobia speedrunners, why else is Phasmophobia as dull as it is, as I said in the intro? One of the biggest issues is the lack of gameplay choices. There's only one game mode, and when it was first released, that made sense. As a small indie game that just kind of blew up to over 110,000 players within 2 months of its Steam release, it made sense for it to only have one game mode. And at the time, it was a new gameplay style that I don't really think had been explored as much as you would expect, so it was pretty perfect. But it's been just under 2 years since then, and nothing has really changed. And that means it hasn't tried anything new in a long time. Yes, there's been new maps, and as cool as they are, they lose their shiny paint job pretty quickly, and fade into the sea of mundane, like everything else in an age where the internet moves at the speed of me running away from the taxman. Every time you play a round of Phasmophobia, you have one main goal, to figure out where the ghost is, and although there are side goals, which I do actually quite like, they don't really do enough to spice up the gameplay. The issue here is that the Phasmophobia team have appeared to just taken up the route that most first-person shooters do, which is to add new tools and maps and hope that'll be enough to keep players interested. However, one thing that's very different between an FPS game and a ghost hunting game is that in an FPS game, a new map poses completely different challenges, with different angles to check and requires different playstyles to continue winning. However, with a ghost hunting game, not much changes. Yeah, it looks cool for a while, but as I mentioned, it quickly loses its new map smell. This is where I suggest my first idea for how to bring Phasmophobia back to its good old days. It needs new game modes. These don't need to be absolutely revolutionary brand new modes, they just need some variation from the current mode. Something like timed ghost hunting, where you have a certain amount of time to figure out what kind of ghost it is and get out, otherwise the ghost goes on a murderous rampage and everyone gets game ended. Or, I know this is kind of basic, but I'd still love to see a mode where one of the players gets to be the ghost. Honestly, I don't even know why they haven't done this yet. I mean, I know it would take a decent chunk of code, but it wouldn't be as massive a task as making the game from scratch again. The final issue with Phasmophobia is that it's boring without friends. Now honestly, it might just be because I can only play single player games if they're really investing, and otherwise I just prefer hanging out with people I know and messing around online, but I've just found no point in the single player mode. Some people probably love it, but personally I've found Phasmophobia as a media to have fun with other people rather than have fun itself. I have no idea how you would fix this, and there's only a few games I can think of that have actually managed to be both a medium for having fun and being fun themselves, such as Minecraft, Counter-Strike and Grand Theft Auto, but those games have all lasted an incredibly long time for games, so maybe that's their secret. All in all, I think Phasmophobia is pretty fun every now and then if you get a group of some of your friends and just mess around, but I don't think it's much more than that right now, but it has the potential to be. I just want to quickly add that if you're doing your GCSEs right now or soon, you should check out Revisio.app. A friend of mine made it and he's spent over a year creating it, and it's finally open to the public. This isn't a sponsor or anything, it's just a cool dude made a cool thing, so go check it out. I'll link it in the top of the description.